Well, all right then. If not Hollywood, Manhattan, Kansas. I'm going to be talking about perspectives today. And I wanted to share a story about perspective. A man went to an art gallery and he noticed that there were two still life paintings and they looked exactly the same. Both had a table covered with a red and white checkered cloth, and on top of this was a bottle of wine, a loaf of bread, and a wheel of cheese. One painting was priced at $1,000 and the other was $1,500. And confused, the man said to the gallery owner, "You know, those paintings look exactly alike. I can't see any difference in them, so why is one more expensive than the other?" And the owner said, well, he pointed to the price of your painting and said, "Well, that one has imported cheese." Now here's another on perspective. It's about, because what is funny to one person is not always funny to another person, okay? Our perception is built on a lot of things: our experience, our environment, our social status, and our programming, personal programming. So I'm going to try this one. It's funny to me because I'm dealing with a weight problem here. And as was pointed out, I guess about a week ago, I go see my doctor and do the A1C test again. So we'll see. Here's an exercise for people who are out of shape. Begin with a 5-pound potato bag in each hand. Extend your arms straight out from your sides, and then hold them there for a full minute. Then relax. After a few weeks of doing this, move up to 10-pound potato bags. Then try a 50-pound potato bags, and eventually you get to the place where you can lift a 100-pound potato bag in each hand and hold your arms straight out on your sides for more than 1 minute. And then, once you feel confident at that level, put a potato in each bag. I see we have the same kind of perception here in terms of laughter, because I thought that was a blast. A perspective is it's a particular attitude towards something. It's a way of regarding something. It's a way of seeing or understanding something or someone. It's a point of view. It's an attitude. It's a frame of reference. It can be an understanding that we have. It could be our unique understanding of something. It could be a position or a standpoint. It's basically the colored lens that we use to look out at our world and everything in our world. In the book that we're studying at our Sunday morning class, Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth, he gives a wonderful definition of the word or experience prosperity. On page 10, Butterworth says, prosperity is spiritual well-being. And this involves, he says, the whole experience of healing life, satisfying love, abiding peace and harmony, as well as sufficiency in what he says is the furniture of fortune. And of course, that means material supply. We create lack and limitation in our lives by the perspective that we have of life. We know, especially here in Unity, we know that substance out of which the universe has been created, the substance of God, this is unlimited. And Jesus spoke a great deal about that this supply, this good in our lives, has been freely given to us by God. And yet we experience levels of lack and limitation. And even in Jesus' day, he acknowledged that there was poverty. Remember the story of the woman who came to Jesus and washed his feet with an alabaster of expensive oil and dried his feet with her hair. And Judas came along and said, wait a minute, hey, we could use that. We could sell that oil and we could feed a lot of people. And surprisingly, Jesus' response was, the poor you will have with you always, but I will not always be around. Let her do as she pleases. We see in our experience that our life depends on our perspective. It's kind of like we see what we want to see. Two people can have the same experience. Two people can be looking at the same picture in a gallery and see something different because something jumps out and claims their focus. Butterfield writes that when we say yes to the creative flow within us, we begin to experience what he calls I am positive, I can attitudes, which turn on the power and the skills within us that we need to accomplish what our goal is here in life. When we believe that we can have the joy that we seek in life, the how to do it develops. This is the way the creative process in us works. On the other hand, our disbeliefs are a negative power or energy that frustrates or turns off this inner potential. It doesn't actually turn it off, we actually have it. But the avenues through which we can express this potential may seem closed to us if we have a negative attitude. Are you aware of the many ways that you may have been saying no to the good of God in your life, to the blessings of God, because perhaps you haven't recognized them as blessings of God? Perhaps you have had or suffer from a Mr. Smith consciousness, which is a no perspective. Now, many of you know the story of Mr. Smith, okay, and some of you may not, and I'm going to share it again. There was a flood in Mr. Smith's town, and they were doing evacuations in his town. He didn't want to go. So he remained in his house, and he watched the flood waters rise around his house. And then after a while, he realized that this was a serious thing. And about the time when he realized this, he saw a man coming by his house in a rowboat. And the man said to him, "Mr. Smith, come, get in the boat and I'll take you to safety." And Mr. Smith shouted back, no, it's okay. I'm praying to God and he's going to save me." So the rowboat went on. It had other people to save. The flood waters continued to rise, and Mr. Smith had to go from the first floor up to the second floor of his house. He opened up a window there and he was staring out at the waters below. And he noticed there that there was a motorboat that came up. And the person who was steering the motorboat yelled to him, "Mr. Smith, jump down into the water and I'll save you." And Mr. Smith looked down and said, "Oh, no way, no way. I'm praying to God, I have faith in God, and God will save me." And the person driving the motorboat sadly went away to save other people. Soon the waters rose again, and this time Mr. Smith had to go up the steps and get on the roof of his house. And as he was standing out there on the roof, a helicopter comes by, and they let down this rope ladder, and the guy, the pilot, yells down, "Hey, mister, grab the rope, grab the ladder, and I'll take you to safety." And I bet you know what Mr. Smith said. "No, that's okay. I believe in God, I have faith in God, I am praying, God will save me." Well, it didn't quite end the way he thought. The waters went above the roof line and Mr. Smith drowned. And he was one hot angel, okay, in heaven. He was very upset and very angry with God. So when he had the opportunity to speak with the big guy, he said, "I got something to say to you. Look, I have faith in you. I prayed for your deliverance, and you let me down. I drowned. And so what's the deal here, okay? I don't understand why." And so God said, "Well, settle down, son, okay? Just take it easy, pal, okay? I sent you a rowboat, I sent you a motorboat, and I sent you a helicopter. What else could you expect?" And so Mr. Smith had to deal with his upset. After all, he was in heaven. But Mr. Smith had a no perspective. Each time he was offered help by someone, he said, no, that's okay. God will take care of it. God will save me. And his reason was, of course, that God would do it. God would take care of it. He knew this. He had faith. But Mr. Smith's perspective was very limited. It was a perspective of no. His view of life was too little, and it restricted the flow of good from God. Now, there was a time in my life when I became aware, and this was when I was much younger, and maybe because I was always shy when I was younger, I had a difficulty accepting some of God's blessings. People in my life would come up and they would praise me for something that I did, or they would see the care and concern that I was sharing with another, and they would thank me for this. They were complimentary when I expressed some of my talents and abilities. And I found it difficult to accept that. And so I began falling back on some Old Testament ways. The Apostle Paul said something about, hey, whenever you're doing something, give God the glory. Okay? And in the book of Corinthians, this is 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 17 through 18, it reads, but he that glorieth, let him glory in the Lord. For we don't commend ourselves. The Lord approves and commends us. Whether we eat or drink or whatever we do all in the glory of God. And so that's what I did. When others praised me for something, I would begin to say, oh, don't praise me, praise God. Okay? And that worked for a while. I think it was that I didn't want to be in the spotlight, but it was something more than that also. It was that I didn't feel that I needed the praise of others. In that sense, when I felt myself that I had done a good job or something worthy, I felt good about it and didn't have a need to have someone else make that recognition. The other thing is that oftentimes when I was praised for something, I didn't think it was anything special that I did. If I was talented, it wasn't something that I worked at, okay? And yes, the praise should go to God. But someone took me aside one time when I did my usual, well, don't praise me, all glory to God, okay? They said, let me share something with you. I want to share an insight with you, okay? Are you aware that every time you, in essence, do not accept the good that God is bringing your way, you close a door? You know, it never dawned on me. This person told me that God was using these individuals, and it was God who was giving me praise and encouragement through these individuals that were brought into my life. And when I refused to accept this gift, it caused the other person to possibly feel rejected or negated. And I really had no idea that I was doing this. And life changed for me when I was able to say, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Even if inside I felt you didn't need to do that, okay, it's good, whatever, but I began to recognize that life is give and take. And it's important that we all have the door where we are open to receive, as well as the door where we are open to give. Open. Otherwise, that water in us becomes stagnant. And it was a great lesson for me. And to this day, you know, sometimes it is difficult because in my brain are old tapes. It's blessed to give. It's more blessed to give than it is to receive. Well, when I began to think about that, I realized giving and receiving are the same thing. They're just the flip side of the same coin. And you really can't do one fully without doing the other. Because that's how Spirit works in us. It is a flow in us. So I got quite comfortable. And I think another thing was I was afraid of becoming, what's the word, swell-headed, egotistical. I was concerned that other people might think that I'm making too much of myself, when other people were praising me. And I also felt that perhaps it could cause some jealousy from others who were not receiving this adulation here. But then I began to realize that God is working in everyone's life in different ways, on different levels. We all have our talents and abilities, and we all have the opportunity to be a blessing in one way or other ways. And so when I began to feel this, I blessed everyone else with the same light and love that I was receiving. I felt of myself as if I were a fountain. So yes, I'm accepting this flow, but I'm finding ways to share it with others in my life. And that was a blessing to me. And perhaps you have experienced something similar to this. As adults, we often have difficulty accepting the help that others want to extend to us. That ego self in us is often saying, hey, I don't need your help, I can do it myself. I can take care of it all by myself. We may not say that, but we might feel that, okay? And so rather than accept this love of God flowing through another person, we often close that door, okay? And we don't realize that we keep closing doors and then we become like Mr. Smith, okay? We close off those possibilities, okay? And we become boxed in. For example, if we hold the thought that life is hard, I like thinking of life like this. There's no place where God is not. There's no place where God's wisdom is not, where intelligence is not, where life is not. So I think of life as intelligent and alive. It's alive, okay? And it is very responsive to us, okay? In the book of Genesis, we realize that God gives to man during the creation dominion over the earth, over everything. And so that means that this earth, this planet, the life is responsive to us. It's responsive to our ways of thinking, to our perspectives about things. Everyone knows that, if you talk to your plants, they grow stronger and healthier. And I have seen when I talk to my two cats that they just love it. They roll over and act cute, okay? Sometimes too much so. Cut it out, get down, okay? One in particular who thinks it's very cute to jump up on the keyboard in the office when I'm trying to do some work on the computer. I don't know where he got the idea that this is very cute. It really, really isn't, okay? Now, he knows that when he does that, I stop, I pick him up, and I put him down on the floor. Last night when I was preparing this talk, I actually booted him out of the office. Now, Jordan, he's just fine. He can take the hint, okay? When I say, no, don't come up here, I go, stay down, don't come up here. He doesn't. He'll go back and play with something back in the other room, okay? His brother doesn't take no for an answer. Now, he's very intelligent, and I know this. And when I say, he knows, stay down, okay? But he doesn't believe me. He says, I'm so loving and so cute, and she loves me so much that she's going to let me do this. Well, I had to put him out, and he howled the entire hour when I worked on this talk, outside that office door. Howled and howled and howled. I almost took pity on him and opened the door, but no, that's exactly what he was expecting me to do. So life responds to us. Life is intelligent. And so when we have the perception that life is hard, okay, this life around us, this universe, responds and says, oh, I didn't know that. She believes that life is hard. I'm going to do everything in my power to make life hard, because that's the energy, the vibe that she's giving me. So here's life responding to the way that we are thinking, believing, seeing, perceiving. It responds to us. There is no doubt about that. And so what happens with this no perspective on life is that we begin to see problems and challenges everywhere, and everything does become a struggle because we have declared that life is hard in our consciousness. And Jesus knew that the key was what we are doing with our thoughts. He said to Peter, when Peter recognized, well, Jesus did ask, who do you say that I am? He asked, who do people say that I am? And then he asked his disciples, who do you say that I am? And Peter spoke right up, you are the Christ, expression of God. And in his response to Peter, he said, on this rock, I will build my church. I will give you the keys to the kingdom. And whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose in heaven will be loosed on the earth. And Jesus was talking about the power of our thought, the power of our words, the power of our attitudes toward life. If we want to have a life is hard attitude, okay, that attitude is energy. All is energy. And life responds to the energy. Like does attract like. So if we put out that kind of energy comes back to us. It's a law, the law of attraction, the law of cause and effect. Our job is to become aware of this and to work this spiritual principle in a way that blesses us and blesses our world. In an essay called Trouble is an Inside Job, Eric Butterworth, late Unity minister, speaks about what happens when we operate from the perspective of no. He says, we go below positivity. An interesting idea. He wrote, you and I we've been reared to believe that our environment causes almost everything that we experience. Our problems, when we are upset, it's other people doing things, it's situations going bad. It's all of these outer things. And we find ourselves upset. We think that we're just unlucky or that it's the will of God. He explains that life is lived from within out. And trouble, he says, is simply our misuse or perhaps our misshaping of the divine essence that flows through us. Because something else that we do with our mind, with our thoughts, is we give shape and form to the substance of God. This podium was invisible God's substance before it became the shape and form of this lectern, which someone had in mind to create. Herbert Spencer says, amid all the mysteries by which we are surrounded, nothing is more certain than the fact that we are ever in the presence of an infinite, eternal energy from which all good things proceed. It is limitless, but it becomes limited by the shape of our thought patterns, by our perceptions. Problems come to us, he wrote, because in one way or another, consciously or unconsciously, we have fallen below the level of the positive. When we say, oh, that just gets me down, and we feel really down. He says we're referring to this drop in the line, below the line of positivity. He says we may be resisting others or resisting undesirable situations with the thought that things should be different, and we find it difficult to accept that things may be as they are. But until we are able to accept, that doesn't mean we don't change things. It just means that we stop that negative resistance energy inside. Then we can be open to guidance as to how to make effective change in a situation out there that needs to be changed. So what can we do to move from no and get to yes? There is a 6 action step, and these are short, that I'm going to offer to you. And these are from Dr. Terry Kennedy. She's an author and she's president of an organization called The Power of Living Enterprises. She wrote, number 1, and suggests that we choose at least one from this list to work on each day. Number 1, be a neutral observer. When situations occur, don't immediately judge it. She says, step back, take a deep breath, and then try to see it from multiple angles. I'd like the image of a diamond with all the different facets. Okay? And it helps me be aware that any particular image that I have is just one of the many possible facets of the diamond. Number 2, she said, take an optimist viewpoint. Look for the opportunity in the seemingly bad situation. Number 3, deliberately test a new perspective. For example, if you're driving and you're stuck in traffic, she says, don't complain about the waste of time. Use that time. Do some isometric exercises. Take your bottle of water, you still got your hand on the steering wheel, okay? Take your bottle of water and do some exercises, okay? Pump that iron, okay? Or use the time to reflect or meditate, okay? And by the time you've gotten settled and peaceful, traffic will probably be moving again. Number 4, be grateful for what you have. Making a gratitude list can change a lot of things. In fact, she says, every day, think of at least 3 things that you're grateful for. Write them down, okay? Number 5, offer your services to someone who can benefit from your talents, from your listening ear, from your strong shoulder, or from your smile. And 6, keep a belief journal. Write down your core values and beliefs and determine which ones are still working for you, which are still blessing you. And then release those which no longer serve any positive or useful purpose in your mind, heart, or life. Now, to help you do that, I have enclosed in your program today a kind of simplified version of the burning bowl process that Unity does, usually at the end of the year or the beginning of the new year. But you can do this exercise at any time, okay? If you're out at the lake, you can light your little piece of paper and put them in the water, okay? At home, I use my bathroom sink, okay? And you write down, as the procedures, you write down the things that you become aware of which you need to release, let go of in your life, okay? Take some time to be open to divine guidance so that you can be aware of these things and let this come to the fore. Bad feelings you've had about the boss, okay, or your coworkers, or anything that does not serve peace, anything that does not serve love in your life. Release it with a burning bowl. And there's an affirmation toward the end of that process there, but you can create your own. And it has to do with relaxing and letting go and giving those things over to divine love. So God bless you as you grow spiritually and realize your yes to God's good in your life.